just the one game this week, which was the excellent 2-0 win over Gillingham. Trevor Griffiths believes there should be some credit given to the management team for being tactically spot on and also for the players for executing the plan. Alexandra 6077 thought it was a very impressive performance against a rather average-looking top team. The thought was that the defence held up well and we always looked dangerous on attack. Very, very made up for Tracy, who was the star man. Steve Bennett thought it was a true masterclass and a proper shift from every player out there. Mark Birtles thought that cometh the hour, cometh the man. Mark described it as a performance and impact that every crew fan wants from Shiloh Tracy. However, Mark also recognised it was a real team effort from the players and another person who references the tactical masterclass from the management. James thought crew were excellent from top to bottom. He thought that we made a top of the table side look very, very ordinary. He's also so happy for Shiloh after all the flack he's received, and he feels that we're a better side when Shiloh plays. David thought it was a very unexpected result when he looked at the lineup before kickoff. He thought that Breckin was brilliant during the first half, and he feels that Shiloh has been lacking a bit in confidence in earlier games, and hopefully he can kick on now. Tom Mayle thought it was full marks for Shiloh for stepping up when crew needed him most. He also thought that our patched up midfield was magnificent and that Breckin and Taberner looked like a really good partnership, and Tom also takes back his reservations about Conway playing inside. Craig Fisher also references a very well executed plan. He feels that crew contained them in the middle, playing very narrow with a back seven, and then exploited their wide players when they came forward. Adam Turner thinks that this is something he didn't think he'd be saying after the Chesterfield game, is that crew have the best defensive unit in the league. Adam feels if we can counter like we did today against the good teams and control against the lesser teams, it could see crew go an awfully long way. Richard Benson thought it was the second home game in a row where every single player was 8 out of 10, and he also thinks that Lee Bell got those tactics spot on. Side to knee thought we got the tactics spot on with the players available. He thought we never looked in trouble despite the possession stats, although he does feel we need to stop picking up silly bookings. Bob had a headache at Gresty Road as he tried to figure out the formation from the starting lineup, and he fully expected heroic loss. However, he was really glad to be disappointed. Finally, Steve Woolrich says that Tracy was on fire and he thinks that Lancaster is the real deal. Podcast. We are here to review the excellent 2-0 win over the then table-topping Gills. I'm joined today by James Tate.
Hi, everyone.
Henry Lewis.
Morning, Steve. Morning, everyone.
And Graham Miles.
Hi, everyone.
Okay, chaps, let's start with the team. Now, a couple of weeks ago, on this very pod, Steve Davis mentioned that we were a Kane Hemmings injury away from a crisis. Well, that day has arrived. What was your reaction when you heard the news, James, about Hemmings?
Yeah, it's a massive blow. I mean, it's an impact injury by the sounds of it, so there's not a huge amount we can do about that sort of thing. Obviously, we sign some players which have a injury-ridden past. Without jumping ahead, I suggest if we didn't win yesterday, there'd be a lot of questions about signing injury-prone players. I had a bit of a look after the news about Hemmings and saw that we had Chris Long has played 37% of his games since 2021, Omar Bogle 54%, and Kane Hemmings 64%. It's the market we operate in. Hemmings is obviously a massive blow because he's got a decent record and we couldn't do a huge amount about it. It's a massive blow and it leaves us short up top, doesn't it? And it's sort of let the team pick itself.
Aside from Hemmings, there were changes elsewhere. On the pod last week, the team spoke about how the subs bench looked a bit thin again yesterday, should I say. Graham, what did you make of the rest of the changes in the team?
The one I was surprised about was Max Sanders not coming in. The rest of it picked itself, really. It was no surprise that Connolly came back into the team and Zach moved to left wing back. not that I'm particularly a fan of him playing at left wing back, but yeah, I think that was the obvious change.
I was a bit
I think-
surprised at that change, at Connolly coming back in. Just because I think the defence has been settled, quite solid. And well, when I saw it, I think I would have been tempted to leave leave Conway at left wing back and either play Billington at central defensive midfielder or Sanders, who was obviously the obvious choice, who had his shirt and appears to have lost it. Whatever's happened there, we don't know if it's a knock or if it's just a preference or a bit of a reminder that he needs to, kick on a bit. And he is one of the more experienced pros in the squad, and he's not quite performed yet.
I just thought that they brought Connolly in for the height to match a certain centre forward, which we all know about. I thought that's why he came in.
I'd agree though about Conway, because it seemed out of everyone on the team sheet that it was like he was the most difficult to work out where he was going to fit into it. Looking at it at first, it looked like there was 6 defenders on there. Obviously, in the end, Conway's been used much further up the pitch, but he was the one that I was a little bit surprised about. And with that, Connolly coming into the team, given some of the early performances he's had this season, but obviously it was time for him to sort of make amends.
Looking at the bench as well, I was surprised to see Aegis over Finn Roberts. I think management have identified and recognised himself that Roberts is ahead in his development as some of the other younger pros. So I was a bit surprised at that one, with only sort of Thibaut to come off the bench as a striker. I thought perhaps Roberts would have been the preference there. But yeah.
I agree, because I thought Finn Roberts, when he came on at Newport, did a very good job. So I thought that would have elevated him against some of the others that actually made the bench yesterday.
Following all the pre-match drama, because we could probably pretty much do a pod on the team and the injuries before it. Henry, how did you think the new look lineup actually started the match against pretty sturdy opposition?
Yeah, we did well. It felt to me that if we could get through the first 5 minutes, as ridiculous as that sounds, that, we might be in for an okay afternoon. I think we've actually got so accustomed to seeing the team go behind early. But there was a bit of a buzz around Grester Road yesterday. I don't know if it's the whole thing of it was a nice day and the pitch was looking like a carpet. It felt that we had a bit of optimism, despite the squad and the injuries. It felt good. It felt good yesterday, and with not going a goal down early, we seemed to cope pretty well, and I thought the team actually looked good. Thought Breckin linked up well with Lancaster and Tracy as well. The three of those fitted in with each other extremely well. I think Breckin could have put Lancaster through. He sort of tried to play it out in front of him, but with him playing it with his left foot, it sort of curled away rather than bending in front. But we looked good to start with. I think we sort of had to weather a bit of a storm in terms of possession. That was always likely to happen. Obviously, Gillingham have got some great players, but we looked up for it. We didn't look like men against boys, which was a worry for me, seeing the starting lineups.
Yeah, I was with Crew not playing on the Tuesday or the Wednesday. I watched a bit of Gillingham v AC Milan, Grimsby, sorry, and it was quite a similar start to the game, with Gillingham applying quite a lot of pressure, and they were sort of getting up the pitch really well, sort of gathering round the Grimsby box, and then not really doing a lot, not having a lot of cutting edge. So it was quite similar to that in the sense that we did weather that storm. They had that corner, didn't they, which came right across the box, which no one picked up front post, which would have been an absolutely criminal goal to concede, but we got away with that one. And then we sort of slowly got into the game, didn't we?
It would have been very Crew-esque, that goal to concede, sort of bouncing all the way through, and then Nevitt was at the back stick ready to just sort of poke it in. That would have been a very typical Crew Alexandra goal to concede. So sort of getting through that felt like a positive sign for the afternoon, really.
I'm glad you mentioned our former centre forward. What did you make of the reception that Nevitt received, Graham?
It was mixed, but I think that's what you expect, really. It could have been a lot worse than it was. Let's put it that way.
I heard you booing, Graham.
Oh, yeah, sorry. Glad you only heard the booing, James.
Well, eventually, Crewe worked their way through that opening phase, and the goal comes from, dare I say it, an unlikely source. However, the unlikely source actually started the move and then finishes it. James, talk us through Shiloh's first goal, I believe, since the infamous afternoon against Morecambe.
Wow. Yeah, I think Gillingham, it was a loose pass, wasn't it? They lost possession around the halfway line. Shiloh picked it up and they backed off, really. I don't know if they've been listening to the podcast and realised that he's not a potent threat. And they just backed off, left him to it. And yeah, he ran at them, didn't he? And Lancaster down the right sort of peeled off nicely. Tracy laid it off to Lancaster. Lovely bit of trickery from Lancaster onto his rightish foot. And I think he pokes it across with his left foot. And Tracy is unmarked in the middle. Again, I'd say if we conceded that criminal defending, absolutely no one on Tracy. But yeah, he was off the mark and the movement was great. And the final product was great. The layoff to Lancaster was lovely. And, you know, it was an easy finish, but he still had to finish it, and he did. And on Lancaster, it's times like that when you watch him and you think, should you be in League Two? I think you've got a bit more about you than perhaps to be in League Two. But yeah, it was a nice goal from us. It was lovely.
What I liked about it as well is Lancaster and Breckin had both picked up yellow cards not that long before. I think Breckin had put in a pretty nasty slide tackle that deserved a booking, and Lancaster had kicked the ball away, you know, kind of stupidly. And similar to what he was doing just before halftime last week, where he picked up a silly booking and you kind of worried that he might do something to get himself into trouble and get sent off. That didn't stop him at all, and both Breckin and Lancaster kept on pressing, and that goal came after sort of a couple of little openings, and it was great to see Lancaster beat his man. You know, he's becoming so good at that, getting the ball across, and it was a perfect goal for Tracy because, you know, he couldn't really miss that. It's exactly what we need.
He's becoming vital for the team, Lancaster is, and I just hope it is just precautionary in coming off. But to me, he's playing a little bit more inside now than he was when he started the season, and it seems to suit him more.
I'm not buying that he's got an injury, to be. I just think it was the yellow, and given the circumstances with the squad, if we lose Lancaster, it's very difficult to see us creating a goal. If he has got an injury, it's a brain injury. It is just petulance of kicking the ball away. But yeah, hopefully he's all right. And because what is he, one yellow away from a suspension? Maybe, I don't know. He can't be far off.
Yeah.
So yeah, we can't do with him getting sent off or getting a ban from his amount of yellows. So yeah.
One thing that I noticed about the goal was it reminded me a little bit of Lancaster's layoff against Harrogate for Hemmings for the first goal, in that he did the trickery, but the pass, even though it's a simple pass, it was pitch perfect. Tracy didn't have to adjust his stride. And actually, it's a perfect goal for Tracy. He didn't have time to think about it. He just had to do it on instinct. And I think if you give him time, it's probably the worst thing in the world for him because he seems to confuse him. So I think the fact that it was there and he just had to react probably helped him. So 1-0 up. Mickey, after not the best start to the season, is back to his imperious best. And there was an excellent block which prevented to me a certain goal from Nolan. Graham, how good was that block from Mickey shortly after Crewe scored?
Just awesome. That changes the game because I think if it had come 1-1, Gillingham would have had the tails up and it might have been a different game, but that was awesome. And Mickey, I think this season's been a lot better than he was. I thought he looked tired at the end of last season. And him and his partnership with Knight Lavelle is so good. Them two work very well. But Mickey is leading the team, and it's great to see him back.
It was quite seamless as well, the way, obviously, Dimitri went to left centre-back and Knight Lavelle into the centre rather than on the right. So it worked quite nicely, didn't it? It wasn't too rusty or anything like that. They didn't show any signs of not being familiar with each other, apart from the Connolly-Dimitri little thing in the second half. But yeah, no, they were good.
Yeah, we'll miss Knight Lavelle on his next game when he's on international duty. So I wonder also whether that's part of the reason bringing Connolly in as well. So we get him into the team before we definitely know we're losing one of the centre-backs.
Okay, we get to half time, and as has already been mentioned, Lancaster is withdrawn. Is it injury? Is it petulance? Who knows? However, he doesn't come out for the second half, and he's replaced by Thibaut. Henry, after such an impressive first half from Lancaster, not seeing him come out, were you a bit worried about how things might go in this second 45?
Yeah, it was a little bit. I thought, if anything, we might shore things up a bit more defensively, maybe bring Sanders on, if anyone. So I was quite surprised to see Thibaut come on. But obviously, having seen what he did last weekend, I was also really excited. It's nice to have a player to come onto the pitch who you think is going to deliver something a little bit different and is going to scare defenders and sort of get you on the edge of your seat. And we've not seen a great deal of him, but what we have seen, it's good news. So although Lancaster had gone, you know, you could totally understand why he had gone. You don't want him getting sent off. You don't want him getting injured. So it's good management in that respect. And it was also an opportunity to see, you know, this exciting young prospect having a go at a tiring Gillingham defence in the second half.
They are a good defence. Let's not forget as well that is it OG or Ogie and Max Amer, two of the better centre halves in the league. I think they've conceded lowest maybe in the Football League until yesterday. So yeah, it was a real test for Thibaut, wasn't it? But you would not want to play against him. He was occupying them all day, wasn't he?
I thought Ogie was there to be got at, though. I thought he looked a little bit suspect yesterday. I think he looked a little bit shaky, and when the ball was sort of coming up towards him and he had to control it and bring it down, you felt as though there could be one that slipped through him, and you know Thibaut could nick him behind him. So it was quite a good matchup from our perspective to have Thibaut running at him and give him even more to think about.
Chaps, you both perfectly set Graham up to talk about the second goal, where obviously Thibaut plays a rather significant role, Graham.
Yes, he gets the ball. He goes forward for a few yards and plays it out to Tracy. At that point, I'm shouting, "Don't shoot!" He cuts inside, it's his left foot and goes in off the post. Again, as you said, Steve, he didn't have to think about it. Tracy's problem is when he has to think about it when he's one-on-one with a keeper. But no, Thibaut picked it up and ran at the defence, and he's such a good prospect. I'd like to say he's one of the better ones we've picked up from non-league, even going back to the level of Steve Jones many years ago. So I'm very excited to see how he goes on.
I thought that was the Shilow who was unplayable in the first quarter of last season. Pace, aggression, goes at his man, cracks it in the bottom corner. Henry, is that the player we were so amazed by in the first part of last year?
Yeah, I've got written down the goal is exactly what we've all been asking of Tracy. Just get your head down, you know, make some space and just shoot. Aim for that bottom corner, and what a finish! Like, it's such a good goal. From where I was sat in the main stand, there was a split second where I thought the ball was going to bounce back out, and just to see it squirm and go into the back of the net, it was just absolutely beautiful. I was so happy for Tracy. I was, you know, saying earlier, the atmosphere behind the goal was particularly good. It was good to see a pretty decent attendance in the GRE and everyone sort of racing down to Shiloh. It felt like a really significant moment for him, for the team and for the fans at home as well. You know, it's starting to pick up again. And I think that goal sort of felt like how when Nevitt scored last year, you know, it's a similar sort of time of the season, and it felt really big. It felt like a good moment for Shiloh, and I'm just so happy for him, and obviously happy for the team as well, because it meant such a lot at that time. I think Gillingham were just starting to get frustrated with each other. You know, a few bad passes out of play, and the goal came at a time where they were really starting to wonder whether they could get back into the game. So yeah, it was great, really, really good.
Do you think him scoring the first goal gave him confidence to have a go for the second? I believe that first goal, even though it was a tap-in, just gave him confidence. He seemed to grow more into the game with it. So hopefully that confidence will carry on.
Hopefully. Although I distinctly remember saying something really similar last season after his goal. I think it was the Wrexham goal or something. But yeah, hopefully he kicks on. He's gonna be playing up front or nearly up front for the next, I don't know, at least a couple of weeks, I would have thought. So yeah, hopefully he can kick on and ride that wave of confidence.
Following this, there's a real period of crew pressure, lots of chances. A notable one with substitute Holacek, really unlucky not to score after his efforts parried by Morris. James, impressed by Mattis when he came on yesterday?
Yeah, he was good. Everyone was good, weren't they? But yeah, Mattis was good. He did what he needed to. He was pretty mature on the ball, didn't do anything rash. And then, yeah, he obviously could have had the goal where he made a really good connection with that strike from the edge of the box and blocked on the line, wasn't it? So he was unfortunate there. But yeah, he did well. Perhaps, I don't know, little break on the bench has done him a bit of good. I don't know, ready to come back in maybe. But yeah, no, he was good.
Following the crew pressure, Gills make a raft of substitutions and basically throw the kitchen sink at the Alex, but don't really create anything until there's a misunderstanding at the back that presents Nevitt with the chance he's been waiting for, Henry. Thankfully, it was the Nevitt of 2 years ago we saw, though.
Yeah, it was one of the only sort of bad moments in the game for our team. I think the defence does have that in them. All of the players have that in them, and it was Mickey and Connolly, wasn't it? I think they had a bit of a mix-up, bit of a lack of communication, and of course Nevitt's racing through. But I think it's just another example of Marshall making a big save in the last 10 minutes of a match to keep us in the game and really sort of instill that confidence in the defence. I think it kind of felt inevitable that Nevitt might score yesterday. To me, it really, really did. And to see Marshall come out on top and make a really good stop from the one-on-one, I was just so happy for him. And at that point, you kind of felt, okay, we can really go on, because I don't know about you guys, but it takes until about the 94th minute of a 2-0 lead for me to think that we might have a chance. So, I think that one not going in, I'm like, right, we're getting closer now. We are getting there. This could actually happen. So, yeah, it felt significant. It really did.
So while we've had a good run recently, and had a fair few victories, successive victories, clean sheets, to me, it's always been tempered by the fact that we haven't really played anybody that's any good. So, Graham, we're down to the bare bones yesterday. Another impressive victory. What did Lee Bell and his team get so right on the pitch? Bear in mind the odds that were really against us.
Yeah, it's just the formation. I thought, and I've not been a fan of Zach playing out as a wing back at all. I think he's far better in a three at the back. But even going in wide, when Marshall had his goal kicks, he gave an option because he seemed to be aiming for Zach Williams every time. And he was always winning the headers. So that was putting us on the front foot. And we just seem to be playing with confidence. Just the last three games have been so much better, starting with Harrogate. And I know Lee Bell said that he thought it was patchy last week at Newport, but I thought we played pretty well at Newport. And we just seem to be playing with confidence. And we've changed the system, not having two holding midfielders. It just didn't seem to work. And I think that's been the upturn of the form since then.
It's impressive because looking back at the team news, and you look at Conway, Breckin and Taberner as a central midfield trio against top of the league, you think, Jesus Christ, that is a mess. But they did a really good job, didn't they? They tired, obviously, but they put a real shift in. I don't know, it felt like there wasn't a huge amount of play in the middle of the park. And we were obviously targeting getting Tracy and Lancaster in behind, which was working really well. And I don't think Gillingham did a lot to stop us, really. And they lost their spark, didn't they? They took off some of what looked to be their more creative players, like Armani Little. Yeah, it was an interesting one, but really, really impressive tactically. Because I'm not going to lie, when the tea came out at 2, I was really concerned and expecting a battering.
Yeah, exactly the same. Exactly the same. I thought it was going to be a difficult afternoon.
Yeah, I would have taken a 0-0 once we saw the team. Well, even before we saw the team, I would have taken a 0-0. So, yeah, very impressive. I'm surprised Gillingham took their number 8 out. As you say, James, he looked the most creative player and he took him off, which was good. And we say about Taberner, now I've moaned that he doesn't get stuck in and challenge, but he seemed to be getting more willing to have get involved in challenges yesterday, which is a very good sign going forward.
Now, again, it's another game where I think everybody is an 8 out of 10 minimum.
Yeah.
But I just want to highlight a few players who I think is worth a mention. So, James, I'm going to come to you for your namesake. James Connolly had a bit of a tough start to his crew career. Obviously, got the hook after the Chesterfield massacre. Good to see him come back in and have a decent game to that yesterday.
Yeah, as I said before, I wouldn't have brought him back in, but I thought he did well. He did really well. Um, he dealt with everything he needed to. Um, it felt like if he did have another bad game, he could have been out of the picture, really, couldn't he? He could, because people were already writing him off. But yeah, he did have a really good game. A lot of aerial battles, which was good. Some of his distribution was pretty good as well. I remember one ranging pass out to Zach on the left, which was lovely. So yeah, it was good. And as Graham mentioned before, when we're going to be without Knight LaBelle at Doncaster, we need, well, Connolly's going to be playing and he's going to need some confidence in that. So I'm pleased that he's got that good performance under his belt before probably a tougher test against Doncaster.
Henry, I've got a question for you from another member of the pod who's not with us today, but he's messaged me and said, Ryan Cooney, player of the season. Discuss, Henry.
I mean, he's not the technically best player of the season, so I'm going to be fairly diplomatic with that. But in terms of cult hero of the season, it's certainly getting towards that status, I would say. He is improving though, and he is becoming less and less of a liability, which I felt like he was a lot of last season. And I think my issue was always last season, whenever he started matches, I was concerned. Whenever he came off the bench, he looked okay. This season, from the start, he's been a driving force. And I think him and Mickey are kind of teaming up in that back five, as it often is, and using their experience and really actually driving this team forward, which is really good to see. And I think with Cooney, it's fine to be that guy and be sort of like the cheerleader for the team, but the performances also do have to be good. You can't be making silly errors. You can't be letting your man go or balls running by you, or whatever. And now he's bringing the performances. His crossing's been great. His defending's looks a lot more solid. So yeah, he's getting there. He's getting there, definitely.
That's obviously a no to player of the season. And I don't know if you've seen it, and I'm not sure if it's bad form, and Stu will probably curse me for this, for the host to be uttering bad language, but there was some absolute top quality shithousery to the Gillingham fans along the touchline. I'm not sure if you've seen the video, but the holding up of two fingers and a zero and the patting his tummy when they call him various names, top stuff from him. But as you say, Henry, last season he was probably just a cheerleader. This year he has actually earned his place in the team on merit, and I think he's significantly improved.
Yeah, can I add something to it? I think playing as wing back suits him more than playing in a flat back four.
There was nearly a Freudian slip there,
Yeah,
wasn't there?
yeah. Indeed. It suits him so much better. And yes, he does look fitter as well this year, but that might be playing games.
Yeah, true.
And we've kind of mentioned him already, but I'm going to come back to him because I think it is worth another reference. Thibaut, James, I'm really excited by him, and I think he looks a real prospect. And bearing in mind the step in terms of non-league that we've taken him from, he really seems to have taken to league football incredibly well.
He does, yeah. I mean, I remember listening to Mark either on last week or the week before when he was talking about watching him in pre-season and he wasn't too impressed with him. And I was the same, to be honest. When I saw him in pre-season, didn't feel like I saw a whole lot. I didn't quite know what he was offering. But yeah, since he's come into the first team in the season proper, he's been excellent. And yeah, like we discussed earlier, his movement seems to be one of the key bits of his game. When he had that chance when Tracy got released down the right, Thibaut's movement to sort of pull himself back and wait for the pullback was excellent. Nearly got himself a goal there. And yeah, it's those sort of signings that really seem to excite us as Crew fans, maybe more so than academy players for some reason. Picking those non-league gems is just it's something quite exciting about it, isn't it? And yeah, like you say, Steve, he did really well. And he's dealt with the step up really, really well. He did seem knackered, which you'd expect, but hopefully he'll get more of that match fitness as he has to play in the next few weeks.
Just on that chance as well, James, the skill to even get his foot round and sort of hook it through was so good to see. It's not often that you see players at Gresty Road pulling off that sort of skill. I feel like he almost got hold of it too well. He kind of hit it too centrally to the keeper. If he'd scuffed it a little bit, it might have kind of rolled into a corner. But yeah, he's such an exciting talent. Anyone that wants to try and pull off that skill in a game is someone that I definitely want to go and see week in, week out.
And it was a lovely pullback from Tracy as well, in terms of final product from him.
Yeah.
And I think, like you say, James, it's so nice to see us. We've got such a rich history of kind of iconic players like Sean Smith, Steve McCauley, Colin Little, Steve Jones, who we've picked up from the non-league, who have improved immeasurably and played a massive part for the club. It's so good to see us tapping into that market, and with Finn Roberts in the squad as well. It's good to see us returning to that area. Now, my motto is never look at the table until it's 10 games old. Now, we've only played 9 games, but most of the teams have played 10. But we sit 8th. We've got a game in hand. James, at the start of the season, a lot of the pundits didn't have us destined for relegation this year, but had us plodding along in mid-table. Do you feel we are definite promotion contenders this year after a bit of a slippery start?
It's a little bit too far for me. I'd say we're in with a good shout of getting in the playoffs. I still think that we've got a lot to prove, even though performances have massively improved since that Chesterfield hit. Like we referred to earlier, a lot of the results so far have come against really poor sides who haven't offered a lot in terms of challenge, but we've dispatched them, which is obviously positive. But yeah, in terms of the real tests, Gillingham should have been one, which we've obviously won and dealt with really well. I thought we neutered them. So yeah, I'm still in the position of playoffs as a realistic aim. I am not thinking about automatics. I think that's probably beyond our reach.
And one final point from the game yesterday is that the crowd was spot on 5,000, which is a bit of a interesting, slightly nerdy stat. And there was some discussion here on the pod. Is that genuine, or someone just pulled a figure out of the hat? The women's team were in action at home against West Didsbury and Chorlton. Let's have a listen how they got on.
Matt, unfortunately, fell to a 2-1 defeat today. What are your thoughts after that one?
I felt like we deserved a draw, and even that said through gritted teeth, because it wasn't our best outing. We didn't execute the game plan at all, and I'm tired of saying that. We're too inconsistent at the moment. When we're good, we're very good, and then we're throwing up a couple of performances like that. Darwin was the same last week. First half was very similar to that, moving the ball far too slow, get caught in possession, kind of hitting the ball in areas rather than what we've worked on all week in training. We had a reaction at half-time last week. We had a reaction today, but ultimately, our finishing and our decision-making in the final third didn't allow us to get in the lead, and then they scored a good goal at the end. But I do think that the performance warranted a draw, but you can't argue we just weren't good enough.
Yeah, it must be frustrating after last week and what we said after last week that we sort of didn't pick up this week and start with the intensity we finished with.
Yeah, the reacting to the triggers that we're doing to try and get a reaction, that shouldn't be the case. We should be starting the games we mean to go on, and that's 2 games on the trot now where we've reacted, but ultimately we've given ourselves too much of a challenge to attack, really. So listen, West Dids were good. They did what they had to do. They were much more street savvy than we were. They managed that game so well. Even the tough decisions that the ref has to make, I thought they played that card brilliantly, and they got them decisions going their way. We didn't. We were fouled at times, and it's the dark arts of football. At no point do I want my players going down, but you don't get fouls unless you go down. It's crazy. That's the way the football world is. If you stay up, the referee's got an easy life and it can go on. So that was frustrating. And in the final 10 minutes, when they're doing exactly what most teams were doing, trying to run the clock down, and we're just allowing it to happen. It's head-scratching moments throughout a lot of that game.
We did well to get back into the game, so it must have been frustrating that we kept up the momentum for a period of time, but then mistakes cost you games, don't they?
They do, and we gave away a lot of set pieces. So we scored, and I felt like we scored at a moment where we were on top, probably the first time in the game. I felt like we were marginally the better team in the first half. I wouldn't say we were ever on top, if you know what I mean. It was not the best half of football by two teams that weren't particularly great on the day. Second half, we started very intense. We did quite well. We got the goal, and then it looked like we were going to go on and then take the game. I genuinely believe that, even though still some of the decisions, still some of the quality was off. I felt like we had enough to go on and win that game, and then lots of silly set pieces given away, and then the ball breaks at the edge of the box, and I just feel like we were so slow at closing it down. You can hear me screaming my head off, just wanting someone to get out and close it down. And she's done what you want your players to do. She's hit the target. She struck a very good ball, but she shouldn't have been allowed that amount of time to do it.
We did, however, play some good football for a period during the second half. Why isn't that a constant thing?
I don't know. I wish I knew. At moments, at times, they can combine so well. And then sometimes, even, the girls struggle with it. The girls go, I don't know why I've done that. And that's being a top footballer at this level. Is not doing amazing things. It's doing the right thing consistently. And we give them these options in training. We have a game plan. I always say, stick to the game plan, you can't lose. If you stick to the coach's game plan, you get it wrong. It's the coach's fault, not yours. And if you deviate away from that game plan, then that's on you, and you'll get away with it if it works. And if it doesn't, that's always going to come back on you. And that's what we've done recently with deviating away from the game plan. And we have to keep reinforcing that game plan, picking the right players that we think can execute that game plan, because we've got such a belief that this game, we don't change it from week to week. Our game plan's the same every single week, pretty much. Some minor tweaks depending on the opponents, but it's just not computing at times, and we've got to try and figure out why. That's what our job is. Moving
on to next week, return to cup action against Notts County. They're a league above. What are you expecting from that game?
Well, it's going to have to be much, much better. It looks like Shanice has gone down with a knee injury today, and we don't know how serious that is, but it's almost a given that she won't be available next week, which is a massive, massive issue. That's Hannah and Shanice now, both out. Two of our biggest players. So we'll have to look at that. We are looking at bringing another player or two in. Obviously, bringing the right people in at the right time is key. So we'll push that again this week and see. But it's just going to have to be sharp. We didn't compete as well as we could have with a team in our league that I feel we should be on top of, certainly at home. So we can't run before we can walk. To think that we're going to go into that game next week and perform like we did today and get anything out of it, we'd be absolutely stupid. So we have to go back to the drawing board. Us as coaches will do that on Monday, and we'll look at what went wrong. Is it personnel? We don't believe it's the game plan? Is it it's not one of them off days? It's happening too consistently, and then just go with a game plan that we believe can win. But we are definitely going to need a reaction and some big characters to step up next week, because it's going to be our toughest game of the season.
Thanks for that, Matt.
Cheers, mate.
The actual next game for Crewe is Harrogate in the travesty of a competition that I won't even name. It's an unimportant match in a cup game that shouldn't exist. However, on this occasion, as a pod, we do have a rather vested interest in it. More on that later, but we do have an insignificant game in the week. After that, we're up to the more important business for a tough away trip to Doncaster, scene of last year's magnificent travel-busting playoff win. Donny had an amazing 3-0 win at AC Milan on Saturday, and it looks like a pretty challenging task. They have, however, lost a few players from last year. Graham, what's your take on a tough trip to Donny?
I think this will be our toughest test so far. I believe that they will be up there at the end. Not a great start, but I do believe they'll be up there at the end. And I think that's going to be a very tough game, especially depending on the strength of the squad and Jack Lancaster, whether it's petulance or however. if he doesn't make it, I think it'd be a very, very tough afternoon. It'd be tough enough if he makes it. So, and I'd be happy taking a draw from the game.
Yeah, I think this might be the game where we recognise the importance of Knight LaBelle more, perhaps. Been quietly going about his business like an assured pro. And to be without him is going to be extremely difficult, I think. Yeah, like Graham said, they're going to be up there, aren't they? And they'll want to get their own back on us. So it's going to be a tough day out. And yeah, I'd snap your hand off. I'd take a draw.
Henry, you nervous ahead of the trip as well?
I am, but also there is this thing with Doncaster now that we've got, and obviously the last time we visited that ground, there was very, very happy memories made. So I think, while obviously we're a very changed team since then, I expect us to go up there with the belief that we can get at least a point out of the game. I think we don't. I get the feeling with Lee Bell is that he doesn't fear anyone, and obviously having the experience against Doncaster last season, I think he will certainly have that fresh in his mind, and he'll use that to inspire the players. But yeah, the guys are completely right. Doncaster are obviously a good football team. They're going to be up there towards the end of the season. It is going to be a tough test, but I definitely give us a chance. I definitely give us a hope of at least grabbing a draw.
Okay, Henry. Inspiration from Lee Bell, hope of grabbing a draw. What's your prediction?
I'll go 2-2. It seems a nice scoreline at that stadium.
A nice Desmond. James, what score?
0-0. We're well overdue.
Good point. Graham, what's your prediction?
I'll always go with belief, so I'll go 1-0, a 90th minute winner.
Okay, and that's 0-1 to Crew, isn't it?
Yeah. Oh yes, of course.
Just checking, you're not giving us 90th minute heartbreak.
Going to lose, yes. Yeah. It's 1-0 Crew, and a late winner. Let's put it that way.
We've had a fair few 90th minute heartbreaks at Doncaster. Let's not add to it.
Yeah.
Okay, I spoke to Daniel Nice to get the Donny perspective on the game. Right, I'm here, Daniel. Daniel, good to have you with us.
Yeah, thanks for having me on again.
No, not a problem. Now, obviously, we all know how Doncaster's season ended last year, your disappointment, our excitement. How has the squad changed since that playoff defeat over the summer?
Yeah, it's quite interesting, really, because I thought we'd kept the bulk of it together and then made some good signings. But Tuesday's game against Barrow, we played them towards the end last season. I think it was the last home game. And actually, there was only 2 starters from that game that played on Tuesday night. So it actually shows, I know we had a few injuries and suspensions on Tuesday, but there has been actually quite a lot of change within that team. So I think it's probably credit to Grant McCann and his staff, if you like, that the continuity of style's still been there. So yeah, we've kind of picked up where we left off. We're not obviously firing on all cylinders as we were towards the end of last season, but yeah, the style is still good to watch, and we're still winning a good amount of games. But yeah, it did surprise me actually looking at it to see how the personnel had changed quite dramatically, really, when you think of it that way.
So who have you lost from those 2 playoff games that we might recognise?
It was probably more the obviously the 3 loan signings that played a big part for us. Low to Tyler in goal, Craig in midfield, and Adelican sort of in the forward positions. But I think the other day we had Molyneux and Anderson suspended. Obviously Molyneux's a key player for us, but actually, you know, when you look at it, the goalkeeper, and there was only Jamie Sterry who started the other night. So only one of that back 5, if you count the keeper in that. So obviously we built last season on, you know, being good going forwards, but, you know, to lose sort of 4/5 of that defensive line and Matty Craig, who sat in front of them, felt quite significant. But, you know, yesterday we lost Joe Oliver in the warm-up as well. So we only actually had 1 fit centre-half going into the game, which again, we coped with pretty well. So although there's been quite a lot of change in personnel, obviously McCann's strength is in the sort of style and method, and he's got that across whoever's playing and whoever comes in, which I think is the most important thing as you look to the long term.
So last time out, it was an impressive 3-0 win at Grimsby. How was that as a performance?
Yeah, it was strangely similar to the game last year. I think last year we were 2-0 up at Blundell Park in 5 minutes. And yesterday we scored with the first attack. And then Billy Sharp, who you can normally hang your hat on to take any chance, missed a real sitter a couple of minutes later. So it could have been 2-0 after 5 minutes, but we kept going at them and got another goal. And then, yeah, it was quite strange, really, because we looked like we could score every time we attacked in the first half. And, they looked a little bit of a threat now and again, but, we scored the third right on half time. And then in sort of true League Two style, they had a player sent off that nobody really knows why. It was in the aftermath of the goal. I think it was for dissent. But yeah, I think at half time, we just decided if we keep our shape and keep the ball, then we're not going to be in any danger. But I think if you'd have said to us at half time, we need to win this 5 or 6-0, promotion depends on it, I think we probably would have done. But I think there was just a conscious, there's no need to do anything daft. And the only way we were going to let them in was by making a mistake. So second half was a bit of a non-event, but we don't have too many of those. So it was quite nice to actually see us just sort of calmly see out with a clean sheet, because we've not had too many of them away from home. So that's been good.
Okay. What style of playing style and formation are we likely to see from Doncaster at the weekend?
Yeah, McCann's pretty set on his either a 4-3-3 or 4-2-3-1, depending which way you look at it. He even normally has somebody sort of holding or a couple of players in there. But what he's done in the last sort of couple of games to quite positive effect is sort of drop the holding midfielder into defence as well when we've got the ball. So it's almost become a back three with one of the fullbacks stepping into midfield. So Owen Bailey did that quite effectively against Barrow. But yesterday, he had to go centre-back from the start because of the injury. And George Broadbent, who was meant to be sub and hasn't started many games, he played in that sort of holding role and did it really well. And I think, he deserves big credit yesterday, because to be chucked into, what is our local derby this season with all the other teams going and the atmosphere and, Grimsby, I think it's quite easy to forget we're going into the game with 3 wins. We made them look pretty ordinary. But, the style, he doesn't really shift too much, but what he'll try to do is find solutions within the game. So if he starts with, say a 4-3-3 and it isn't working, he'll either bring another body into midfield or try and get somebody back to push somebody else forward. So McCann's quite good at subtly sort of changing the system within games. Sometimes you don't notice it, but I think the other night it was like Stowe doesn't seem to be right back at all. And then, sort of worked out what was going on a little bit later with him sort of stepping into midfield. So, like I say, he doesn't veer too far from his preferred formation, but if it isn't going to plan, he's not afraid to change it up and, sometimes go to that 3 at the back, which, although a lot of teams in League Two use for defensive reasons, he uses that to get sort of 2 strikers on and go for it a bit more. So, I think he's had, over a season at it now. And I think the one thing last season was it did probably take him a little bit of time to work the division out, because he's managed at higher levels. And when he's played in this division, it was quite a long time ago. So I think the league has changed quite a bit. And, he's probably got all the tools now to change it as he sees fit.
Which players should Crew supporters be looking out for? You mentioned Billy Sharp. We all know him. Who else should we keep an eye out for?
Well, I think yesterday, Luke Molyneux and Jordan Gibson in, I say wide in inverted commas, because they sort of play inverted and cut inside a lot. But in that front 3, Grimsby were either brave or naive, whichever way you look at it, because they kind of left the fullbacks to try and deal with them, and they absolutely ran right in that first half. Gibson in particular, but the second goal, I mean, Molyneux and Sterry just sort of ghosted past them and through. And I mean, it was a really good goal from our perspective. But I'm not expecting Crew to give us that much time and space. I think particularly after we played you 4 times last year, I think obviously you'll be well versed to Molineux. But yeah, I think, the secret, or, it's not so much a secret, but to the success is, whoever plays has played an important role. So we have quite a lot of midfield runners as well. I think Patrick Kelly's been really impressive the last 2 games, but he misses out because he'll be on Northern Ireland duty. So it'll be interesting to see how he shapes up, but he's probably got, a couple of options for most positions. It'll be interesting to see at centre-back whether Olawu's back, because Anderson will still be suspended and Wood will still be injured. So he might be forced to play Bailey at centre-back. He might do that anyway, but I think we've got the most options in that centre midfield, and hopefully we might have James Maxwell back at left-back. He's been a key attacking player for us in that good run last season. And Brandon Fleming played really well yesterday at left-back, but Maxwell gives us another dimension as well as an attacking fullback. So I think it'd be interesting to see how he approaches it, because obviously we played you the 4 times last year, so we'll probably go on to the game, but it could be a bit like a game of chess, given both teams know each other quite well.
As you say, both teams, both managers, most of the players know each other really well after the 4 games last season. So I'm going to put you on the spot and ask you, I feel it'll be really tight. What's your score prediction?
Yeah, I think obviously our home form's been pretty good. I mean, obviously we lost you in the second leg, but I think we've won 12 out of 13 home league games. We were on the verge of a record when we played Chesterfield recently. But as we all know, with those records, they tend to go at that point. So obviously Chesterfield came and won well at your place as well, didn't they? But they haven't had many wins outside that, which seems quite surprising. But at home, we seem to have found a method this year of going about it slightly differently. I think towards the end of last season, we really tried to get at teams and we tended to score early goals and put teams on the back foot. I think this year, 3 of the 4 wins have been 1-0, and we've really had to sort of grind out at times. I think Barrow was a good example in the week where, they came really for a 0-0 or try and nick something from a set piece, but we managed to break them down. But yeah, I don't think there'll be much in it. I think I probably wouldn't back against us at the minute at home, but I know you haven't conceded too many goals either. So I don't know. It probably feels like a game that could go either way, but I'll go for our method this year, which has been 1-0, and hopefully, your method of not conceding too many, but not scoring too many either holds, but in the right way. Hopefully, we're not 2-0 down like we were in that playoff game, which I think surprised everyone, probably not least yourself.
Absolutely. I think it definitely surprised ourselves after our form leading up to it. But I think you're right. Yeah, I don't think there's going to be many goals on Saturday. Daniel, good to have you with us, and thank you for your time.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Okay, a few bits of business to finish with. The first of which is our regular pod competition, which we shall be running again for the fixtures coming up at the weekend. Slight tweak. The competition is now going to be known as Last Fan Standing. See what we did there? In recognition of the fact that our beloved host, Stuart, his good lady wife, has actually got much further than him in every single competition so far. So we're now going to have a change, and it's going to be called Last Fan Standing. Tim's given me an update. And we had a winner in week 5 of the previous game in midweek. There were 5 players left going into it. And at the end, just Danny Bradbury was left standing, as the team he picked, Cheltenham, were the only team to win, and therefore he receives the £175 prize. Congratulations to Danny. He was very much aided by the City of Stoke-on-Trent's second team conceding a last-minute equaliser to Colchester's first shot on target. What a shame and what a time to be alive. Obviously, no game this weekend with a short turnaround, but we will kick off again next Saturday, on Saturday, the 12th of October. I've had a look at the fixtures. They are pretty tough to pick one, so it's an interesting week to start with. Please get your entries in. It is £5 to play. And if you have yet to play, could you please email, and please note that the email is still the same, rarewomenpodcastlms@gmx.com. So although the name of the competition is changing, the email address remains the same. We will then send you instructions on how to play, and that email address will be in the podcast description. And final bit of business is you're probably aware of the pod's campaign to restore some parity to the coverage offered to the Alex by Radio Stoke. As you may have read, it's been a bit of a busy week on that front. And even though he's not actually on pod duty today, Stu has joined us to give us the update on what took place during his conversation with Radio Stoke. Stu, good to have you with us again.
Hello. Yeah, it's a bit odd joining a Zoom call halfway through. It's like watching, I was thinking of an analogy for this. It's like watching your child sort of taking some independent steps, but having not heard it, I don't know whether it's the first steps of a child falling over or going off to university. I don't know if it's somewhere in the middle there, but I presume after the game yesterday, it's been quite a good one.
I can assure you that there's been lots of stumbling and walking into the furniture in the early part of the pod. So Stu, give us an update. You obviously had a call with Radio Stoke. Give us the gist of what was said in that conversation.
One of the agreements of the meeting was I'm not really allowed to talk about what was discussed in the meeting. It's a little bit like the Radio Stoke version of Fight Club. But we did agree that the outcomes could be shared, which I wrote the article on Wednesday night after the meeting, and then it came out Thursday. I presume most people listening to this have read it or have seen it, or someone's told them about it, because other than Russ's bizarrely popular article on Max Clayton, it is the most read article this year and last year. I'm still second behind Whatever the Hell Happened to Max Clayton by Russ Fern, which I don't know why it got thousands and thousands of views, but it did. But in terms of this one feels a little bit more important. Essentially, they've recognized that they've made a mistake by putting a team on radio, FM and DAB and keeping us on Freeview. They have assured us, Tim and I, that isn't going to happen again. I've written that down and I've sent that to them and they said, yes, that's fine. That is a promise that we Crew Alex fans now have, that we will be on DAB if one of the two Stoke teams are playing and the other is not. There's other stuff, which again, I can't go into. I feel like I pushed them as hard as I could. I feel like I pushed them harder than they wanted me to, definitely. Essentially, though, they'd already made their mind up that we weren't going to be going to the away team rotation that makes sense in my head, that makes sense to, I think, most people listening. But I think there's two problems. These are my thoughts. These aren't facts. That I think the problem we have is nobody at Radio Stoke is fighting our corner. There is no one there who is a Crew fan now that Graham is sort of semi-retired and just turns up for match day. And I just don't think they can be bothered dealing with the hassle of Burslem's internet email writers or Twitter users. I just don't think they want to have that opened up, because I genuinely don't think they care enough about Crew and covering Crew enough to deal with the flack that they would get by switching it around now. Their argument doesn't make sense. Their argument is that keeping every team on the same channel means that people know where to find it. That's ludicrous. It's 2024. It's not the 1950s where to change the channel, you have to get up out of your seat and change a channel. Everyone has phones. Everyone has the ability to read. We know what channel we're on if we want to. If I turn the radio on and find Stoke City are playing, I don't just shrug my shoulders and say, well, I guess I can't listen to Crew today then. I did point that out. I said, if the Burslem team are playing on FM because Stoke are playing at 12:30 and then Crew get moved to medium, or DAB rather, surely there's going to be frustrated fans who are just throwing things at their radio because they've got Crew instead of their team on. So that heavy sarcasm was met with the response that it probably should have been met with in a meeting, because I probably shouldn't have been taking such a sarcastic tone. But it's just, it wound me up that that's the argument. It's the flimsiest of arguments. It doesn't hold up to any scrutiny. But at the end of the day, Tim and I went into a meeting with the BBC local radio, and our only authority is that we're really annoyed, and we seem to have become this mouthpiece for Crew fans. I don't really know how that's happened. If I'm honest, I don't really know how it's become my responsibility. Last week was quite stressful for me. I will admit I didn't really sleep Monday night after I got the phone call from Aaron, and then Tuesday night I didn't really sleep much as I was thinking about my thoughts about Wednesday's meeting. So in terms of outcomes and next steps, I put a poll on Twitter and Facebook. Both of them had the same options, and both of them had the same outcome. If I look across all four, because I did 3 on Facebook and 1 on Twitter, all 4 came up with the same option as being the most popular, as in it's a starting point. So what I wrote in the article is, I'm not going to go back to what we were doing, which was encouraging people to write in, complain, just bombard their Twitter accounts on a Saturday with why are Crew not on the radio? Why are Crew not on the radio? I'm going to leave them, because some of the promises they've made is to sort of address any situation, or to see what their situations are, and sort of to look at what's going on. In short, I'm not sure what that means, but I've said I'd give them a bit of time to show us what that means. And I think that's essentially where most Crew fans are now. Most Crew fans have gone with it's a starting point. I would say it's very important to point out that on all 4 of these votes, which were like 300 people, the option of I'm happy with this had about 3% or 2% of the total vote. So it's very clear that Crew fans are not happy that this is a finished solution. But I think most Crew fans are happy to see this as a step in the right direction.
Okay, chaps, anything to add to any of that? Any comments?
I think it's important to recognise that there's been progress made, so well done for some progress. And yeah, I'm in agreement with the majority in that it's a start, but I'm not happy.
Any future plans, Stuart, at this point in
time? Not at the minute. I think part of it is the fact that you're here today, Steve, instead of me, and you're going to be here next week instead of me. So that's part of my selfish reasons. But genuinely, it's more to do with the fact that, we've had this meeting. They have shown willing. That they met us on Wednesday. They had this meeting. I aired quite a lot of grievances. I would say if you were to ask Tim, I was probably the more confrontational and antagonistic, which, having known myself and knowing Tim, I was surprised at. So I'm going to back off for a couple of weeks, and I'm going to leave them to it. And let's address it around Christmas or just before, and see if what they've promised us has happened. Let's see if there's anything else that's improved. Let's see if the coverage has gotten better, more in depth. And just like, I think the thing that I want to see, and I think most people listening to this will want to see, is, do they actually want to cover us? Like, are we a chore, or are we something that they actually enjoy and want to do? Because at the moment, I feel like we're the third chore. I think they quite like Stoke. There's people there that for some reason like the team in Burslem. I don't know why, but we are a chore, and they have to do it because they sort of have to do us. So I'd like to see a change in that. But yeah, in terms of what we're after now, I think we've got something. We haven't got fully what we want, and let's just see where it goes from here.
Obviously, Stu, one of the measures we've taken is a boycott appearing on Praise and Grumble. Are you still encouraging people to do that?
Well, I can't tell people what to do. I can, but you don't have to listen. One of the things that I think we did talk about that I don't think they'd mind me talking about on here, because it's not a negative, it wasn't a negative conversation, was I said to them, if your coverage gets better, then I will encourage people to go on. So if I feel like there's more coverage of Crew during the week, if there's more coverage of Crew before and after games on Praise and Grumble, etc., then, it takes a step for us to give you a step back. So in terms of going on Praise and Grumble, I would say I'm still going to not go on. I need to see it first. If I see it, then I'll jump on. I'm probably more happy to jump on with Lucas, for example, because I think Lucas has been more than fair with Crew since he joined the team at Radio Stoke. But if part of the issue in terms of covering us more, getting more stuff about Crew on the radio means going on the radio ourselves, then I think that's probably a good thing. But at the same time, I think it needs to be them first. I think we have done our bit, and I don't think they've done their bit, and I would like them to do their bit, and then we would continue to do our bit, if that makes sense.
Okay, thanks for the update, Stu. Obviously, if you've been listening carefully, you would earlier have made me make a veiled comment about the Harrogate game. And the reason the Harrogate game is of particular importance to the pod, no other Crew fans, hopefully, because again, it's a travesty of a competition that shouldn't exist, is that we have hopefully lined up another player pod. However, this time it is not an ex-player pod, it is a current player pod. But the Harrogate game is reasonably important in terms of whether this person is able to join us or not. Stu, could you give the listeners some more details?
Yeah, happy to. I don't really like announcing the player pods until they're done, just because if you don't know that it might happen, you can't be disappointed if it doesn't. But this week I sent a message to Captain Fantastic, Mickey Dimitriou, and asked him if he'd come on, and he said absolutely, he'd love to. But it is dependent on the Harrogate game on Tuesday. So we are going to record on Monday evening with him. So that would be out on Thursday like normal when we do our player pods, Thursday morning release. However, if he is in the squad for the Harrogate game, if he's told on Monday morning that he's going to be playing, he won't be able to do it on Monday evening because he'll be busy setting up for the game, getting whatever his professional footballers do, doing all of that stuff. But if he's not in the squad, if he's just going to go down and support the lads that are playing, then we are going to record on Monday. So if you're listening to this after Tuesday, you'll probably know. If you're listening to this on Monday, we will probably know if it's happening or not. But at the moment on Sunday afternoon, we don't know. We are hopeful. At the minute, I believe he's not in the plans to play on Tuesday. So we are hopeful it will happen, but it might not. But we're hoping it is.
Okay. So fingers crossed for a bench full of untried youngsters on Tuesday night at Harrogate. Fantastic. I think that's probably us for another week. So Graham, James, Henry, and Cameo Stewart, thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We shall be back next week to give a cursory nod to the Harrogate game. We may be back before that, but we'll definitely be back at the usual time reviewing the Doncaster game. Until then,